Sewing with Michele. This week I have got a treat for you. We are going to be talking about the Eleganza Pearl Cotton thread. Now this thread has been around for a long time. It has basically, you can use it for lots of things, lots of crafting things over the years. I've used it for friendship bracelets, cross stitching, crochet, beading. I've made like little pulls or closures for my clothing. You can make tassels. You can use it in jewelry making. You can use it in lots of things. It is made for hand embroidery though, and look at these beautiful colors that it comes in. Now this one is a size 8 pearl cotton, which is a little bit smaller than some of the other ones. There are thicker pearl cottons, but I love this one, and I can't wait to show you something that you have probably never thought of doing with embroidery floss, this pearl cotton thread. Now let me talk a little bit about the difference between embroidery floss and pearl cotton thread. Now normal embroidery floss that you get, you can separate the strands. So it's usually 6 strands, and I know when I was an avid cross stitcher for years, I would go down to 3 strands when I did my cross stitching. Now pearl cotton is made so that you don't unravel it. It actually has a wonderful twist to them, and it makes it a little bit thicker, and I love that. I love using this for accenting and cross stitching or embroidery, because it seems to me that it's a little bit stronger because of the way that it's twisted. So I love this thread. I've been using it for years, and I can't tell you how many different things that I've used it for, but there have been a lot. Now, like I said, it's not made to separate, and I do think it's stronger than regular embroidery thread. And with all of the other things that you've used, embroidery floss or pearl cotton thread, I bet I have one thing that you probably have never thought of doing. I can't wait to show you, but it's going to be a little bit later. So, on this week's More Sewing with Michele, let's get going, and we're going to be talking about pearl cotton thread, the Eleganza. So I wanted to show you a few things that I've used this pearl cotton thread on. And keep in mind, this is just a few of the things that I've done over the years. I told you that I used to make those friendship bracelets when I was in Girl Scouts. That was a lot of fun. And all the different colors. You can just do so much with this pearl cotton thread. I've used it in jewelry making, and that's just a few of the things. But I wanted to show you some of the hand stitching stuff that I've done. So the first thing is, I love to use pearl cotton with the wool felt. So I'm going to hold this up real close so you can see with that felt, and this is just stitched on linen. It's just such a fun accent. And because of the way that it's made and because of that twist, it actually has that embroidery, the floss. It actually stands up a little bit, whereas regular embroidery floss with the strands, it will kind of sink into whatever you're sewing. But this wonderful pearl cotton twist allows it to lay higher, so you get to see more of those stitches. And I just love using it with that wool felt. It's one of my favorite hand things to do. So I love it for that. And another thing you'll see here is when I add buttons for, like on this spider's eyes here, I love to use the pearl cotton to tie my buttons on. I love it because it's a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger, and sometimes if I'm doing a flower, I'll use those ends and have them be longer, cut longer so that they show. So that's another thing that I use this wonderful thread for, is attaching buttons, especially to animals' eyes or the centers of flowers. And then, whoops, just basic hand embroidery. You'll see how it lays on top. And this is just a sample I made. You may notice that it's leftovers from when I was showing these flowers at another episode. So I've gone ahead and used these things, and I've gone ahead and just did hand stitching around those flowers, and then simply did so echo quilting. Let me hold it up closer so that you can see the detail. And that's the great thing. It's the details why I love this pearl cotton thread. I have another thing to show you that fell on the floor. Look, oops, can't show you that. This one's a surprise. On the other side, it's got some amazing work that I can't wait to show you. And then there's all those other things you can do. Regular embroidery. If you're doing applique and you want to add decorative stitches. This thread, the Eleganza, is the perfect thing for that. So our little box here comes with 12 different colors, and I picked this one because it seems to get a nice, good variety, a basic set. Oh, I've lost my white, but that's okay. There's white that's included in here. And I love it. I am using in the sample here that I'm stitching, I've used all the different colors to go around my hexes. So once again, I'm using up my scraps. I simply added the hexes to the base fabric, and now I'm hand stitching around with all of these colors to give it a little bit of oomph. So it doesn't matter what type of stitching you're doing, hand stitching, if you're doing crafts, this thread is such a value because of the strength, the durability, the colors, and once again, what we have for you today is the size 8 Eleganza Pearl Cotton Thread. I love it. I know you will too. Okay, a few more things. This thread, the Eleganza, this set of colors here is the Kaleidoscope, which is the one we have for you today on More Sewing with Michele. Now, this thread is 100% long strand Egyptian cotton thread, and it's been gassed twice. Who knew? I guess gassing twice gives it that luxurious, deep, rich colors that we have, and I love that. Now, keep in mind, when you use this, depending upon what you're using, if you're doing hand sewing, you're going to want to make sure that you have the correct needle. You're going to want one with a little bigger eye, a long darning needle, a Milner's, or a chenille needle will work great for you. So just make sure that you have a needle if you're doing the hand sewing that accommodates the thicker thread. And like I said, this is the Kaleidoscope Eleganza Pearl Cotton Thread, and it's size 8. So to pick yours up, you're going to want to go to mores-sew.com or click on the link in the description, and you can go and purchase this today, as well as any of the other items that I've shown for you on More Sewing with Michele. So look at these 3 threads, and let me show you what I have inside them. I have a bobbin with all of them, and the thread is on the bobbin. Why would I do that? Because this is the big secret that I couldn't wait to show you. I've used this thread, the pearl thread, in my machine, and I'm going to show you how you can do it. So here's the sample that I had the back side, and I'm going to show you up close how cool this looks. So let me hold it up real close. Isn't that neat? So I've just done straight line quilting in my machine with that pearl thread. Now, I've got some techniques, got a little bit to talk about, so let me get my machine set up, and I'm going to show you how you can do this too with the Eleganza Kaleidoscope Pearl Cotton Thread. Okay, so this is called a bobbin work. So I'm using the Eleganza thread in the bobbin, not through the top, because it wouldn't go through all the mechanics of the machine, but you can put it in your bobbin. So some of the things that you need to know, since it is a thicker thread, is you're going to want to make sure that you get it wound on the bobbin, but you don't want it to be super tight. And you want to make sure that you don't completely fill it to the end. So I usually go about 3/4 of the way full on my bobbin, and other than that, you put it through the machine just the same. Now, as you can tell, here's my empty bobbin. I'm going to go ahead and wind one for you. It's a little bit difficult getting it in there. So what I like to do is I pull out a nice strand of it. I am going to weave it through the machine as I would any other thread. And then I always like to put my thread through the little eye pull it up. And then what I do is I hand wind it on so it's nice and secure. And then I'm going to pull it over to my bobbin, engage the bobbin thing, and I'm also going to put it through an extra looper thing there. I'm going to pull a little bit more out, and as I start the machine, it's going to start winding it on there. So let's get going. And I'm going to hold it here because I want to make sure that it isn't super tight. And other than that, you can see down here my bobbin's winding up. And that's probably enough for what I'm doing there today. Pull it off my winder, cut my thread, and there I go. I've got it ready to go. So now that I've got the machine with the pearl cotton on my bobbin, I simply attach it inside. Let me get my scissors real quick, and I'm going to snip off that little part there so that there's nothing that can get in the way. Pop the door of my bobbin area, and I simply line it through the same path that I did on any other bobbin thread. Put my top on, and I'm ready to go. So now I'm ready to go physically for the sewing, but I need to show you how you actually do the bobbin work. So being that the bobbin you want to show, this was the top part. So this is what I see when I'm sewing. So you can barely tell, but I made marks and I did a grid line so that I had something to sew upon. You don't always need to do that though. If you wanted to just free sew and have your Eleganza pearl thread showing, that's perfectly okay too. But I like to have a nice straight line quilting grid. So I went ahead and on the top side, which is what's going to show when I put it in my machine, I do my grid, and that way you sew, and I use just regular white thread. Now you could use a different color thread. It's completely up to you what you want to do from there. But I like using the white thread, and let me show you why. When I hold this up real close, you can see that it almost makes it look like it is a Sachiko stitch, because that white thread pulls that Eleganza pearl thread down just a little bit, and it gives it kind of like a dash look. And I like the way that looks. So I'm going to use just my my regular cotton thread up top. I have my pearl cotton on the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and sew. But what I want to show you next is how to prep for the back. So let me put the little sample away. On the table here, I'm going to switch cameras so that you can see how I mark it. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you are going to mark your quilt sandwich, or if you were just doing it on a piece of fabric, you would do the same thing. You're going to want to mark the opposite side. Now I find that having, depending upon what you're making, I like having my quilt sandwich completely done. So I've added just 2 pieces of fabric on the both sides of my batting to make my quilt sandwich. And I'm going to simply use a number 2 pencil, or you can use one of your marking pencils, and just a ruler. And this happens to be one of my favorite rulers, the Quilter Select ruler, which I'll get into that on another episode. But I'm going to turn around and I'm going to show you how using this, you're just going to make a simple grid pattern, and that'll give you a guideline for when you're sewing on your machine. Okay, so I simply am going to use this. I'm kind of lining it up, and I'm just going to make a mark. And then I like to go, we're going to go about 1.5 inches away. So we're going to do a mark there. Let's go 1.5 inches away on this other side. And then we'll go ahead and just kind of find roughly the center, and I'm going to do 1.5 inches on each side. So I don't need to do a big grid pattern to show you. We're just going to do a small little area, and you'll get the idea. Okay, so then you end up with that. You can see the lines. And then when you put this in, now you know exactly where you're going to sew. So I have the pink color pearl cotton thread in the machine right now, and I'm going to go ahead and get the pedal to the metal and start sewing. Okay, so just as you would any other stitching, I'm going to drop it down to 2.2, and we're gonna get going. So here we go. And I'm just simply following that line and stitching. And use my thread cutter. And let me show you. So on this side, you can see that it's just simply white thread. But on the back, look at that. We have the wonderful bobbin thread coming through on that pearl cotton. So let me go ahead and I'm going to do a couple other lines real quick. And now you can see that I have two. And let's go ahead and finish this up real quick. So I love this. I know if you're like me you're already thinking, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be cool to do it on clothing to make it look like smocking, or a fun decorative detail on your jeans? Wouldn't that be cool? The possibilities truly are endless what you can do with this. And I've got two more stitch lines real quick. And as you can see, I have not altered my machine in any way. It's simply, once again, using that thick thread in the bobbin area makes all the difference. And I've got one more of those lines to stitch. And you will notice that I do have on my machine here, I do have my walking foot. That's pretty much a standard procedure anytime I'm working with multiple layers of fabric or my quilt sandwich. It just allows your machine to grab all that fabric and feed it through the feed dogs evenly. So there we go. Simple, easy, fun. Just to do something different, I'm going to go ahead and change to one of the other colors, and I'll add real quick some other detail. So I'm going to pop this one out. Let me show you real quick how I like to store my bobbins that have thread, because I don't want to take it off. I turn the little thread thing over upside down, and I put that bobbin on the inside, and I will keep those bobbins in this container so they're ready to go with that color already wound. So let me grab, let's do this wonderful teal blue color. Once again, adding it into my machine as I would any other thread. Putting the bobbin cover on. And then I'm gonna turn it over. And I'm gonna eyeball it and stitch an X through it. We'll see how well my eyeballs are working today. I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to turn it, and we're going to go this way. And as you can see, my machine isn't giving me any hiccups. It is definitely not a problem at all to do this bobbin work. And there you go. Now I've got an X upon my other grid work. So lots of things you can do with this. It's just so much fun, and I know you're going to have a blast doing bobbin work with this wonderful Eleganza thread. Okay, so I hope you have so enjoyed this week's episode of More Sewing with Michele, featuring the Eleganza pearl thread, and this is the Kaleidoscope color. Like I said, I hope that you learned something new. I hope that you're inspired to do some bobbin work with this fun and wonderful thread that we have for you today, offered here on More Sewing with Michele. So keep in mind, if you're going to be stitching some hand embroidery on wool, or if you're going to be simply adding details to an applique, if you are doing your eyeballs or your animals or wanted to add fun stitchings to your flowers, this pearl thread is the thing to go to. I love it. I highly recommend it. And I hope that you find many usages for this wonderful thread that we have for you today. I'm going to get back to finishing my sewing, and I hope that you have a wonderful week. And until next week, bye-bye.